Do you guys remember what they did back in 2008? What they did was they took these bundles of mortgages, the banks, like they would have like say 100 houses, 100 people's homes, and they would put all those homes together in a bundle. They bundle them all together, and they would assess the value of those homes in that bundle, and they would rate them, and they rated them all AAA. And this is what caused the crisis in 2008. Guess what? They figured out a way around it to do it all over again. They're doing it all over again this time. They're doing it all over again. And they've just changed the name of the whole thing, the name of the whole game. Okay, so U.S. taxpayers are now on the hook for risky Wall Street real estate-backed bonds. I'm fairly certain a few of you have ever heard of broker-priced opinions, BPOs. That's what they're calling them now. So instead of rating the mortgages, AAA, now they're rating the house itself. And it's called broker price opinions, or BPOs. It is something I think we should all become aware of, given the influence of BPOs in the market for valuing residential real estate and securitized bonds. Before we get to that, let's revisit a little contemporary American robber baron history. In other words, now we're going to talk about J.P. Morgan and his friends at the Federal Reserve. You know, the robber barons, the criminal cartel. In the immediate aftermath of the United States financial crisis, financial oligarchs immediately got to work helping Main Street climb out of the Wall Street-created ditch by buying foreclosed homes from hordes of newly destitute Americans and then renting them back to those same people. Okay, so here's an excerpt of what he wrote here. It says, well, they aren't really your new slumlord in the sense that you have been debt slaves to the financial system for decades. What I really mean is that now becoming overt and literal. Literal means financiers are now the main players in the real estate market and are buying all the homes. Ordinary citizens were kicked out over the past few years. Yep, we build out the financial system so that the financiers with access to cheap credit can buy up all of American real estate so that they can then rent it back to you later. So fast forward a few years, and private equity is frantically packaging these real estate rental properties into bonds. In order to value the real estate collateral, you need some sort of appraisal, but the normal process of actually looking at properties is seen too costly and too time-consuming, so market players are cutting corners by using brokered price opinions, or BPOs. As Bloomberg reports, this practice is coming under increased scrutiny, and for good reason. U.S. security regulators are investigating whether bonds backed by single-family rental homes and sold by Wall Street's biggest residential landlords used overvalued property assessments. So see, what they're doing is, back during the 2008 crisis, the rating agencies rated the mortgage-backed securities. They rated the mortgages. They grouped them all together, and they rated the mortgages as AAA. Well, this is very similar, because what they're doing is they're taking these property assessments and they're assessing them overly high at what they actually should be, and this is a very similar thing. It's just a little bit of a different twist to it, but it has the same effect as the mortgage-backed security crisis. I'll read on. It says, Radian Group Incorporated, Green River Capital Unit, is one of the market participants that received a request for information from the Securities and Exchange Commission in March about brokered price opinions, or BPOs. The company said in a regulatory filing gate Friday, Green River provides BPOs that are used to value real estate in securitizations. The agency has been looking at whether BPOs were wrongly inflated. In similar letters, were sent to other companies, potentially serving as a starting point from the industry-wide probe. According to a person with knowledge in the matter, the person asked not to be identified because the matter is private. Green River is one of several firms that provide BPOs to the units of private equity firms and other investigators who brought up hundreds and thousands of properties in cities across the U.S. after the housing bubble burst. Many of them focused on distressed homes whose owners were evicted during the Great Recession. Never forget, what's good for Wall Street is good for Main Street. Also, they hate us for our freedoms. Brokered price opinions are a cheaper and less stringent way of evaluating what a property is worth than an appraisal. Property valuations are a sensitive subject in the housing industry because regulators said inflated appraisals contributed to the housing bubble a decade ago. The biggest private equity landlord, led by Blackstone Group, Invitation Homes, have sold more than $15 billion in bonds since 2013, backed by some 120,000 residential homes or rental homes. According to data from Morningstar, many of those deals were valued using BPOs. One recent bond deal tied to Invitation Homes was backed by guarantees from U.S. taxpayers. The writer here says, please tell me this is a joke. The BPOs are key elements in securitizations, determining the basic figures such as how much rent to charge tenants, how much leverage and risk is embedded in a deal, and how much investors could recover if the bonds go sour. Many of the securities were assigned AAA grades and sold off to investors such as pension funds. So what they're doing is the BPOs lead right into this assignment of AAA grades, and then they're selling them to investors and pension funds. This is the exact same racket that they were running last time in 2008. They've just twisted it a little bit so that they figured out how to do it all over again. That's what's going on. But they're using BPOs now. And you know, but it's the same racket. So the writer of this, he says, is this 2006? In other words, just before the 2008 crisis. Is this 2006 or is this 2017, he says. And he says, this is where it gets truly disturbing. He says, in traditional real estate deals, these opinions help establish sale prices. But these bond deals, they help estimate how much could be recovered in a liquidation. Some analysts say that BPOs, they don't take into account a possible plunge in home prices, and the values tend to be more optimistic than a full appraisal. Unlike appraisals, BPOs also aren't necessarily done by a licensed professional, nor does the inspector always go inside to look around, which is a standard procedure for an appraisal. So evidently, to get serious about this, to do a BPO, the inspector, first off, doesn't even have to be licensed. Doesn't even have to be licensed. He can drive by and he doesn't even have to go inside the house. He can just drive by the house and take a look in from the front. And if he's on the take, like most of these other guys who are on the take, he'll give it the assessment and appraise it at these extremely high values, just because he's on the take. He might not even go and look at the house. You know, this is what the idea I'm getting here. I mean, I'll read it again real quick. It says, in traditional real estate deals, these opinions help establish sale prices. But in these bond deals, they help establish how much could be recovered in a liquidation. Some analysts say the BPOs, they don't take into account possible plunge in home prices, and the values tend to be more optimistic than a full appraisal. Unlike appraisals, BPOs also aren't necessarily done by a licensed professional. In other words, the guy's not even licensed. It says, nor does the inspector always go inside to look around. In other words, he drives by the front of the house and possibly takes a quick look at the front of the house because he's not going inside. And they say that that's not normal for the standard procedure of an appraisal. In one April securities offering of about $944.5 million, Green River submitted BPOs that relied on a drive-by evaluation. So they assessed $944.5 million worth of homes, and it was all done on drive-by evaluations. It says, and the homes were assumed to be repaired and in good condition, according to a deal prospectus issued by Fannie Mae. Ah, Fannie Mae's in there. Oh boy. The BPO is not intended to be a representation as to the past, present, or future market values of any of the properties. The underlying mortgage in that deal is tied to rental properties owned by Invitation Homes and was guaranteed by Fannie Mae. That is the first time taxpayer-backed home finance company has guaranteed such a loan. Freddie Mac is also looking into getting involved in the market by providing its guarantee. It says when private equity landlords opted to use BPOs instead of appraisals in their securitizations, some investors expressed skepticism, and bond graders applied discounts to the BPOs. Moody's Investor Service, for example, applied 15% haircut to BPO valuations when grading a transaction last August, citing inherent risk of using BPOs on residential properties instead of an appraisal. So these BPOs, they can just drive by the front of the property. And, of course, I just know what they're doing. They're assessing the value 10 times. You go out and try to get the value that they're assessing those homes at on those BPOs, you know. And they're just driving by the front of the house. They don't even go inside. The house could be dilapidated, falling apart. There could be leaks in the plumbing and water stains and mold and mildew and gosh only knows, you know. And they're not going to see any of that driving by the front of the house. But they don't want to go inside or anything. They just want to do these quick evaluations because these guys are all a bunch of crooks. They're on the take. It's all rigged. The whole system's rigged right now, and it's getting ready to come down. I'm telling you, it's going to come down harder than 2008. So this article came from Zero Hedge and Tyler Durden. I want to thank them for their good hard work in exposing the corruption in the system. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe, and we will catch you in the next article. Bye for now.